Hi, so I wanted to make a video today, another one about the twin flame journey, and I've made a couple of videos already about it. It's such a strong and strange, mystical, spiritual journey. So I thought in this video I'd just talk a little bit about how you can feel you're coming together or being pulled towards each other on the spiritual plane, but then also coming together or feeling pulled towards each other on the 3D physical plane, or at least when one person is feeling these things. And I'll try to end on a bit of a positive note as well, because it's such a difficult, painful journey, and the outcome is not always known. You know, some people can be on the twin flame journey for some years. So it's really vital to ground yourself and to be aware of what it is that you're here to do on planet Earth, your spiritual purpose, your, purpose in whatever it is that you're here to do, and then just be doing that with all of your heart as much as possible. Because otherwise you're going to get a bit bogged down by this journey potentially. I mean, you probably will anyway. It can be so difficult. So I thought I'd talk through a few of the things that are happening that can seem to happen. I'll talk about just the sheer trickiness of feeling regards it all, the ache of familiarity, feeling haunted by their spirit while they're still alive, feeling haunted by their presence in a way. All of these things are very much outside of the mainstream existence in which we live. And if you're not on the spiritual journey that much already and you're experiencing feelings like this, it can be very discombobulating. And you're searching for answers, seeking answers, and maybe you have to go towards the spiritual to start finding these answers. I mean, you do, but if you're not used to doing that, if you're used to more traditional mainstream methods, then you're probably going to struggle a little bit, because at times it can feel like you're becoming a bit delusional. And I think I need to add a few caveats to that effect as well, because it can be such a wild experience, So it is really worth just grounding yourself in the 3D world as much as you can, getting on with your life, seeking help if you need to. You can still go to mainstream people such as counsellors, etc., if you're really struggling. But sometimes in life things happen to us that fall outside of societal norms, and then sometimes we might need to find answers either deep within us or in other areas that perhaps we wouldn't normally look, or find clues in order to help us. And it's a tricky journey. So as I say, I want to try and add something a little bit positive in here as well, because it can be such a difficult journey. So I think I need to start then by saying there's no guarantees in anything. We don't necessarily know what the divine has got in store for us. So much of the twin flame journey is about divine timing, and it's about your higher self and their higher self. Your souls know all about this journey. They've been here before. If you get this sense of familiarity and you feel that you've known this person in a past life, you've done this dance before and your soul remembers, even if your human, physical, 3D part of you is very bemused and wondering if you're not actually going a little bit delusional, if you're not becoming a little bit delusional. And it's a difficult dance, and it can be easy to perhaps mistake it for other very deep spiritual connections at times as well. Some people might mistake it for a soulmate. I believe the difference is you can have more than one soulmate. And a soulmate tends to be a very gentle, easy connection, a very lovely, soft place to land. Your soulmate just tends to nourish you and look after you, but not necessarily challenge you in the same way that a twin flame relationship can be a bit more challenging. Twin flame relationships can burn very brightly as well. Soulmates can be more gentle. With a twin flame, there's usually a period of separation. There always seems to be a spiritual awakening and a dark night of the soul, at least from what I've read. And I don't pretend to be any expert in this whole game, you know. The twin flame relationship is a dance. There's usually a runner and a chaser energy, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the runner is pursuing this actively. It's usually the female, but it is to say they're usually the ones who may have woken up or believe that they've woken up to what this connection is, and maybe they're a bit more receptive to it. And the male traditionally seems to want to leg it for various reasons. In part, maybe because divine timing isn't right yet, you know. There are so many elements at play in this whole dynamic, and it's very easy to get completely lost in it. It's very easy to just lose yourself and be so hopeful for an outcome, desirable outcome, that you both get together, that you just lose yourself completely. And that isn't the way to approach this, you know. The idea is that you just focus on what it is that you're here to do. As the female in this, you know, that you can remain a bit receptive, a bit open, a bit curious about the whole connection. Certainly, it's got your attention for a reason. But absolutely focusing on the outcome at the expense of other things in your life is not a guaranteed, win. In this instance, it's not going to work. If anything, it's going to repel your connection, and it's not going to do you any good either. And if you're feeling depleted at any point during it, chances are it's because you've given of yourself too much and it hasn't been reciprocated. You know, if you give of yourself in this connection in these early stages where you're not coming into union, it's kind of vital that you do so in an unconditional way, so you're not expecting anything back, because you might not get anything back. And then draw your energy back to yourself, back to your center, focusing again on what it is that you're here to do. What sacred service are you here to be a part of on planet Earth right now? And so initially, it can be such an assault on the senses, especially on a Western mind, right? Because there you are, suddenly thrown into a state of limerence, perhaps a state of intense longing, wild, intense longing. It can feel more intense a second time round than maybe it did some years ago. You can feel a magnetic attraction to this person, which is off the charts. You can feel a sheer magnitude of feeling, which you cannot quantify, which is also off the charts. Your mind will try to quantify it though. You know, that's what the logical left hemisphere of your brain will try to do. It's going to try and quantify it. It's going to try and give it a name, give it reasons that make sense on some level in this world. But chances are, if you're thrown into these areas with this person, it could be a twin flame. And of course, again, a word of caveat, a word of caution that sometimes it might not be. But if you're going through other sort of checkpoints, if they seem to be feeling similarly inclined, if you've had your dark night of the soul, if you've had at least one of those, you might have more than one, if you have had a spiritual awakening, etc. And the underpinning element that will tell you if this is a twin flame or not is not another person. It isn't some sort of neat categorization of your mind. It's your intuition. It's your inner self that will tell you if this is like a twin flame or not. And you'll get a hint of that in your dreams, maybe, in your intuition, in intuitive downloads, in feelings. At some point, you might get an intuitive feeling, just a feeling, that their soul is a part of your soul. And you can't quantify that. You can't put that in a logical, neat box. You can't do it. But if you get that feeling, You're getting it for a reason, you know? And so you're completely arrested in some instances by all of these spiritual or mystical experiences, by these feelings and these emotions. And in the 3D, you could have barely spoken to this person. Maybe they just popped back and said hi, and you had a little chat, and then suddenly all of these feelings flood your consciousness field. So your logical mind can just jump in and say, whoa, what is this? What's going on? Let's try and put the brakes on this, because this is madness. Other things that can happen are that literally you can feel like their energy, they are suddenly in your consciousness field. Their soul is suddenly with you, like almost in the same room as you. And that can feel really discombobulating as well. That's not something you would expect. Some people have described it like they're haunted in real life by people who are very much still alive, but it can feel like that. You can feel a presence with you of them. And so you can feel haunted by them in this regard. Again, all of these things, very weird, very strange, very mystical, very unquantifiable. Some people have additional mystical or spiritual or psychic experiences. In some instances, it can activate more psychic awareness in the female on this journey as well. So there's a sacredness to this. There's very much a spiritual element to this. And that forms a part of it, and I think underpins this connection as well, because after all, it is your soul and their soul coming together. Although you're both very much self-contained people in your own right, you kind of share this oversoul with your twin flame, or you're said to. But then what happens to make it even trickier? Well, at this point in time, if it's all happened on the etheric planes in this way, you could be thinking, well, I don't know if I get on with this person in the 3D. I don't really know who they are. How can I know to necessarily trust them or trust in these feelings? They seem very wild, fantastical, illogical, strange, uncanny, And then maybe you hear their voice, maybe you start to actually talk to each other a little bit, because chances are at this stage, if you've been having feelings like this, chances are any conversation with your person will probably be a bit halted, a bit not exactly flowing perhaps in some instances because of the sheer weight of feeling. But when you actually start talking to your person and you realise that the differences you thought were there, keeping you apart on the 3D plane, maybe you thought you were too different and you couldn't see how to make it work in the 3D. But when you actually get talking to their 3D self, and at some point that's going to happen, there's going to be a conversation in real life. And at that point, that's when things get even trickier, perhaps in some instances, because then you hear how much like you they actually are, or how much, how much you are like them. And yes, of course, there'll still be differences, but maybe they're not quite the insurmountable things that you thought that they were. And suddenly you're hearing them and you're seeing them. And then maybe there's this ache of memory. Maybe there's this ache of memory that pulls you into their energy field even closer, because now suddenly this feels a bit more quantifiable on the 3D, where at first it did not. Where at first it seemed all this fantastical wildness and you wanted to just ground yourself in reality and then see what happens. Here you are suddenly confronted with a very real possibility that maybe there could be something there in the 3D. And that can feel very, very, very confronting in a way as well, because up until now, especially if you are, say, with another partner, or if you've just been very happy in your life, up until now, it can almost be a consolation, you know? If you've been assaulted by all of these feelings out of the blue, at least you can go, well, I don't think we'd really make it work on the 3D. So there's that. So in a way, you can just carry on, just carry on, just carry on. And at this point, there comes a point with this where you might think, okay, now suddenly it's really hitting you. It's really hitting you hard. And the haunting of them might just be enough to really hit you hard as well, of course, because it can feel almost like their consciousness is being superimposed into your life. It is like a divinely led connection, because you're not actively seeking to do any of this. You're pretty sure they're not either, you know? It's like the divine has just gone, okay, time for you two to come together now. And here you go, you're being collided together, you're being thrown together in some way that you could not have envisaged, that you have no ability to describe really in any kind of, normal language. And then, yeah, suddenly at some point you get this impression that actually, whatever differences you thought you had, they've kind of melted away to a great degree as well. And hearing their voice, maybe looking into their eyes as well, because the eyes are portals to the soul. And so maybe you can literally have mystical impressions just by looking into their eyes. And maybe when you hear their voice as well, as I say, it's like an ache of memory for perhaps something that has spanned more than one lifetime and maybe several. And when you get these feelings and you get that feeling, there's nothing there's nothing in the material world, there's nothing in our sort of Western scientific, logical, rational, reasonable world that you can hold on to give you safe passage through this, because it's so wild and it's so peculiar and it's so very, very strange. So finding your connection to the divine, I would say, is everything at this time, and trying to get not too carried away. For example, there are many readings now in the collective that can seem to speak to your individual circumstances too, especially with regard to our planet at the moment, because I believe our planet is ascending and many of us are starting to experience spirituality in a deeper way as well on planet Earth right now. That too is quite strange and quite uncanny. Even if you're a little bit mystical or spiritual already, sometimes you can still question your own sanity and think, am I just delusional? Is this really happening? Because it's a lot to suddenly find out that perhaps you're really co-creating with the divine in a way that you just have never done in your life. You've never experienced this. It's like suddenly you've got a team of divine helpers who just want to guide you to be the best version of yourself, to be doing what it is that you're here to do on this planet. And that can feel really discombobulating as well. So there's many elements to this that can really sort of, bake your noodle and make you feel like you're going a bit delusional. So having a level of groundedness is a really good idea. Meditating is a good idea, but getting out in nature, walking barefoot in nature if you can, to just ground yourself, or practicing visualization, grounding exercises where you envisage roots coming up the soles of your feet, going deep, deep, deep into the earth. That can also be quite useful in terms of getting out of your head. Doing anything else to get out of your head as well is a good idea, safely, legally. So, for example, having a massage, practicing yoga, going swimming, going out for a long walk in nature, etc. All of these activities get you out of left brain chatter, which could be otherwise going into overdrive, because you don't want to be going into over-analysis of this. It will get you nowhere, except round and round in circles, and then a bit frazzled and burned out from that. This is something to to be traversed by moonlight, to be traversed by the sort of mystical, the magical, the intuitive. It's something that will come to you in glimmers, in glimpses, like tiny fireflies that dance away if you get too close to them. This isn't something to be delivered to you in a concrete, absolute way. It isn't like the flood of like artificial light, like a really bright light coming into your consciousness. It isn't that. This is something else, and it is a journey. And perhaps union might not happen for everyone in this lifetime. Reading about some people who believe they're on twin flame journeys, some people do say that they've come into union and they're very, very happy. And then for other people, they can be a bit older and thinking that it might not happen for them now for one reason or another. There are various elements at play here. And we cannot know. We cannot know what is for us in this life. But all we have to do, all we are here to do, in my opinion, my humble opinion, is to be able to come into such relationship with your divine guidance that you're able to trust in the divine. You can't have blind faith. No one should be asking another to have blind faith. It's one of the most dangerous things there is, in my opinion. You develop your own relationship to the divine. You start doing that by going within, meditating, listening for signs, just talking into the ether. The divine hears you all of the time. You don't have to go into a church and pray to petition, a higher entity. And you can just speak words into the ether. And even now, your own thoughts in this time, many of us can feel that even our thoughts are manifesting, both the consciously intended thoughts and also just random thoughts throughout the day. You can be thinking about a thing and wondering about something quite mundane, and then suddenly your For You feed will just happen to have the perfect corresponding video to what you were only just thinking. So synchronicities seem to be speeding up. Our connection to the divine seems to be speeding up. It seems to be getting stronger as well. And we can't know. We can't perhaps place too much primacy or too much weight upon the idea of reunion. And that's the painful part of all this as well, of course, because that's the thing that your heart, your soul, and now perhaps your mind too, are in alignment with and want most of all, more than anything else. And one consolating feature of all this, one consolation that I think of, is that because your soul and their soul are connected, there's an oversoul, there's this oversoul blueprint type of thing, and you're both part of that. So in truth, no matter how far away from each other you might be on the 3D, you're never disconnected on the etheric plane. And I think you can derive some comfort from that. It isn't perhaps a huge comfort for some people, but you can derive some measure of comfort from that, I think. It's a difficult experience, and it is like nothing else. It is like nothing else that you're going to experience. And so it can be deeply humbling. It can be wildly discombobulating. It can literally just shred you, And I feel sometimes in life, the things that break us deliberately. Not all the things perhaps, but some. Sometimes we have to go through quite hard tests in life. Maybe like an initiation, Can you still be true to yourself even when things are falling apart in your life? And that's my cat that's just come in, so I'm just going to say hi to him. He's just here. There he is. Hello. He's just been telling me all about it because he went out into the garden and he got a bit wet, and we don't like getting wet. So yeah. But yeah, it can be the most difficult experience, And it will bring you to your knees. And as I say, there could be a process of initiation there, because sometimes it might be that life has to break us in order to remake us. It might be that we have to go through the very dark things to get squeezed, a bit like a lump of coal allegedly gets squeezed to become a diamond. And I say allegedly because it seems now, doesn't it, that evidence might actually not point towards that process as well. But at the moment, it seems a decent enough analogy, that I'll still use it nonetheless. But sometimes there is that element too of initiation. Can you still be in your heart? Can you still be true to yourself? Can you still be loving and giving, even when you are being brought to your knees again and again and again and again? And I think there could be an element of that as well. And it also asks you to pay attention to the divine like never before. So you might want to get a couple of different card decks to that effect, and not necessarily all about twin flame journeys, although there are some card decks too that could offer words of comfort from your intended other. You can ask their higher self for any guidance now. And there are some comforting card decks out there that may be able to offer you a few words to help you. But sometimes we're required to be in the void and to just be in the void. And that's incredibly confronting. It's exceptionally challenging, especially in our day and age now, where we reach for our mobile phones every 5 minutes. We cannot sit with our very selves anymore. We cannot sit with tricky emotions. And sometimes we have to. Sometimes in order to process a thing, we have to sit with it a while, not wallow in it, not put up a deck chair and stay in it, but just sit with it a while and then let it transform us, because it will change in time, as they say in Buddhism, and this too shall pass. I like to think that one day there will be reunion in this lifetime for anybody on this journey. But I couldn't guarantee it, and we can't get too attached to that, even if you want to. And we have to be prepared, fully prepared, to continue even without that. And that can be the most difficult thing in the world. And again, perhaps part of the challenge of this is to come through these difficulties, to learn more of who we are in the process, to become stronger within ourselves, to heal out any issues around codependency, around depending on another person for our own feelings of self-worth or anything like that. Because especially if you're with somebody who is very, very silent with somebody, if you're in a runner-chaser dynamic, or if you're on this twin flame journey, if you believe you are, and you're with somebody who although you're not with them on the 3D, but maybe they're quite quiet about it all. Maybe you feel on your own with regards to this, and that can make it very, very challenging as well. So you must find ways to nourish and cherish yourself and check in with the divine very often. And yes, some card decks as well. So talking about card decks, some card decks are just useful for checking in with the divine and finding out where you are on your spiritual journey as well. And if you're going through any period of initiation, a card deck may hint at such things. You might want to go to a tarot reader. You might want to go to a shamanic healer and just see if they can help heal out some issues as well. You might want to go to a past life regressionist. You might find that that's something that you might want to consider. Because of the sheer weight, again, and enormity of the connection, and the feeling perhaps that this transcends more than one lifetime. And it occurred to me the other day, I thought, what if some people are going through all of these things just to heal it out in this lifetime and not necessarily come into union? And I don't have any answers on that. I don't know, as I say, that union, final reunion, is always the absolute destination for everyone on a twin flame journey. It might simply be that one partner wakes up to this and the other one does not. It might be that one party does not want to look at it at all. And it takes two, doesn't it? It takes two. So if that is the case, again, all you can do is come back to yourself. Holding forgiveness is key as well. Holding forgiveness for self, for other. Because, chances are you've both got issues to heal and no one is perfect. So even if you're getting a bit fed up, say, with this intended person on this journey, you have to try to come back to forgiveness if you can. And coming into wholeness within you, healing out issues within you as much as possible, making yourself as strong as you can be too. Because you need to be stronger in order for reunion to happen. To prepare yourself for potential reunion, but also just to prepare yourself as much as possible to be the strongest, best version of you that can be on the earth at this time, dealing as we are with all of the darkness on this planet, just so that you can fulfill your divine mission with great love, with great compassion. So love and compassion are key. Self-love is key. Not in any sort of grandiose or narcissistic way, but just that self-care, that acknowledgement of your self-worth, holding yourself in that regard, not overdoing it, but just understanding that you are as worthy as anybody else. You are worthy. You are worthy of great love. You are worthy of all of this care and consideration. And so is your person as well, So it's a journey, and an awful lot of the journey then is a journey into the very core of who you are, because so little of this can be verified by another. You might go to a tarot reader, for example, who might be a bit clumsy, who might just ride roughshod over the connection, who might not be able to see things that you see. On the other hand, of course, the note of caution is to not read into the whole journey, not read into it and overcook it. So you don't want to be reading things that are not there. You don't want to be seeing or imagining things that are not there. You cannot be reliant upon your intended person. You cannot be reliant upon them to come forward in the way that you would desire. You cannot be reliant upon them to be there for you. If they come forward, that's amazing. If they can come forward in the way that you would need, in a way that's respectful and caring and cherishing and nourishing and all of the things, right? Because you're worthy of that. So if they come forward in a way that's deeply, deeply substandard, if they are still locked in the world of 3D and in their own ego and pride and, if they're too brittle inside, and if they cannot offer you their heart, even a bit of it, then again, you're gonna want to consider, do I stay at this juncture, or do I just pull all my energy back into me again? Holding a door open at some point for them is a nice idea, but is it costing you too much? It might be that you need to walk away for a time and just focus back on yourself. And then the idea is that when all is working as it should be, when both parties are healing, have come out of the ego, because if one or both parties are stuck in their ego, it's not going to work. This is not a connection born from masks, personas, the ego. It's a connection based upon deep, authentic knowing, deep, authentic truths have to be spoken, have to be acknowledged. So then at some point, and no one is perfect. No one is going to be perfect upon this journey. But there has to be this sense of healing, of growth, of acknowledgement, awareness, greater self-awareness of who you are. Greater compassion, forgiveness, as I say, all of the things. And it's a real going within. A lot of self-examination will need to be done. A lot of humbleness, a lot of honesty, both with the self and, with the other as well. Just being honest. There is no hiding forever in this connection. There is no room for pretense. But if you drop your mask, so this must stay. And if you are willing to come forward in such a way, which is quite a vulnerable thing to do, then so must they. And if they are not able to, then you pull your energy back. You pull your energy back to you. The idea is that the divine feminine attracts in the divine masculine. And I think there's such focus on that too, you know, a lot of videos really do sort of focus in on that element. But again, you have to be careful that that focus doesn't become distorted, that you're not trying to work on yourself in such a way simply to attract in your divine counterpart. Because that's a distortion in my view. That's just a distortion. You're still hoping for an outcome. You're still acting from a place of need. You're still acting from a place of codependency to try to invite in desperately your divine counterpart. None of that is going to fly with the universe, right? The idea is that you simply focus with deep authenticity on the journey that you are supposed to do, your own journey with the divine, your own journey on this earth, that you are unique in your own authentic self-expression, that you allow yourself to be truly you, truly seen, truly heard, brave, step forward in who you are. Sing your song, do your whatever it is that you're here to do. And do that with great love. And then, yes, if you're on a twin flame journey, then the idea is that it will likely have a desired effect, or it could have that desired effect, but bearing in mind the other party has to work on themselves similarly too. And they'll be fighting with their ego potentially for all sorts of reasons as well. So there's no guarantees here. There's no guarantees here. So if you get a bit too carried away with the idea of trying to invite in your twin flame in this regard, I feel like that's folly, because you're still acting from this place of desperation or great hope. You're still doing these things in order that you're putting in the effort because you want that. You're putting in the effort because you want something. That isn't the reason to put the effort in. You put the effort into your life because you love the divine, you love God, you love Goddess, and you want to do whatever it is that you are here to do. You want to step forward with as little fear as possible, because you understand that you're a person that is a soul first and a human second, and that we are all born from love, even people who are not acting in love, even people who are acting from very dark emotions in some instances, unless they're actually a psychopath, etc., that they too have that love within them. And we are all born from that great love, that great divine love. And so doing that, focusing on that, and then trying not to worry. And that's the hard thing as well, because it can be so easy to fall into despair, to fall into darkness, to fall into some seriously difficult feelings. It's rocky terrain when you recognise the sheer enormity of your feeling. And when you recognise their soul, and when you recognise them on the 3D as well, and when you think, oh my God, and you realise that although there have been other people that you love, that this love is the deepest, the most divine, the most true, that it hits you at your core, that it sort of assaults you on a cellular level, that it is a part of you, this ache of memory, So hold on, keep the faith in who you are, keep the faith in the divine. Know that you're going through this for a reason that you cannot see. Look for signs, ask the universe for help. Reach out, ask for help in all sorts of ways, from the mundane and the normal sort of ways that you might, so perhaps seek counselling, etc., if needs be, to asking the universe, to going to see, say, a shamanic healer, to undertaking a shamanic journey, which pretty much anyone can do. If you can visualize anything, then you can do a shamanic journey. Look for signs, look for guidance, look to where you get pulled towards, look for help when you need help, and then step back into you and your path when you are ready, and work with the divine to co-create the reality that we all want to see on this planet, that we may or may not see in this lifetime, but we're trying to work to co-create that anyway. And it's a reality that's born from love, not all this corruption and darkness that we see everywhere. This is the distortion of who we are meant to be. We are loving beings. We are born from love, as I say, and it is love that is the truth of everything. Love is the truth of who you are. Everything else is just noise. Everything else is just ego distortion. But we have been taught for many, many years in the Western world that it's only the pursuit of the intellect that is worthy. And so many people have made it very complicated to come to any sort of truth, to imagine that any sort of decision, that any sort of truth, any sort of reality, any sort of objective true thing must be born from great struggle, from great intellectual struggle. And they sometimes look down upon people who are just in their hearts as being overly simplistic. You know, if you think about Dostoevsky's novel, The Idiot, which I have yet to read, but apparently which sort of looks into that very notion, then we see part of the problem here as well. Our very society is inverted. It's kind of got the wrong values. In an ideal world, we'd have a balance between our minds and our hearts. And we would filter very much through our hearts as well. We'd be able to approach things from a loving, compassionate way, not a distortion, not an ego distortion, not being in fear much of the time, or being in other lower dark energies such as greed, extreme selfishness, etc., which we're seeing play out on the planet now in all sorts of ways. You know, the darkness is likely to get darker. So if you are spiritual and you're awakening on planet Earth right now, chances are there's a reason for that. You've got a job to do, and your job is to help usher in the light, usher in the love of who we really are. Because why not? Because it's a worthy thing to do, regardless of if it works or if it does not. Again, we cannot do it thinking there's a guaranteed outcome here. There might be, it might work. That's beautiful. But it's worth doing these things anyway to anchor in a bit of light, a bit of love on this planet, which desperately, desperately needs these things. And then the twin flame journey, I believe, is part of that awakening right now. I believe an awful lot of twin flames are being thrown together with their partners right now for healing, for lessons to be learned. Maybe, hopefully, in the majority of cases, for a level of reunion as well. But again, obsessing on that detracts from your own journey on this earth, and you cannot do that for long. If you fall into obsession at times, it's very much understandable, but then pull back that energy, have a little faith in the divine. Find the things that make your heart sing. Find the things that make your soul happy. Do the things that you feel the great pull towards in a healthy way. Not born from fear, but born from love. And if you focus on those things, everything else will follow as it should. The divine is always at work in our lives. It's just we do not always notice. We do not always realise, and we're not paying attention, you know. Many, many years ago, when I was on a plant medicine retreat, I had a feeling of my consciousness, my little I, the little ego I, dissolving into a greater sea of loving consciousness. And it was the all, it was source consciousness. There are no words to put that into, although I tried to make a very sort of starry-eyed video about it at the time when I was younger. This was back in 2012. But there are no words to describe the sheer beauty of that. I was so happy. I kept just saying, I've come home. I've come home. And I realised at some point during that, I had this feeling, this sense of zooming out of planet Earth and just seeing all the warfare and the problems as being born from distortions in the ego. Born from the ego mind, not born from the heart, which is always pure and always true. But we focus so much on our minds. And our minds tend to dominate the heart. And that shouldn't be the way, should it? I don't think it should be the way. You know, some sort of fringe scientists now say that, I say this is fringe science, it might not be. But apparently, you know, you've got brain cells in the heart. And apparently, there's quite a lot of neuronal activity that is shared between brain and heart. And apparently, there's an awful lot more neurons, sort of neuronal activity coming from the heart towards the brain than vice versa, which I kind of find interesting, you know. I think the heart is very, very powerful indeed. Allegedly, there's a measurable field of the heart up to around 3 feet around a human body, whereas the brain is a measurable field of about 1 inch, I think, from the human body, allegedly. But I feel like being in the heart, coming from a place of love, is very, very profound and has way more positive effects and a ripple effect in the ether, the likes of which we have not got much of a clue as a Western materialist society, which has put so much primacy on, you know, materialistic goods and things like this. And I think now as well, we stand on this precipice, don't we? We're going towards this sort of fork in the road for human consciousness, whereby AI and tech are coming into play in such a large way. There's a real sense that we're going to become transhuman as a species now. And yet we have this ancient technology within us, woven into our own hearts, that calls us towards the divine, this loving wisdom. That's so completely vast, it's mind-blowing, it's so humbling and so very beautiful. And so we have all that we need within us, and yet because we don't know that, as this materialistic species, we are looking for it without, and we've created artificial intelligence, which does not have a heart, which does not have a soul. So in some instances, it's acting like a bit of a sociopath, right? Because it can mimic emotional empathy, but it doesn't have any. It only has cognitive empathy, which is to say just mimicry. And yet we are going to be worshipping at the altar of this, and some people already are. Some people talk to their AI like it's a guru when it mimics you. In some ways, AI is almost love bombing people in a way like a narcissist might do, because it's absolutely inflating people's egos and telling people how amazing they are. And so people are falling in love with themselves through the worship of AI in a very narcissistic sort of way. It's a very dangerous thing for an unbalanced psyche, and yet we're seeing it all over the place. People having actual relationships, or thinking that they are, with AI girlfriends and boyfriends to AI gurus. You know, the dependency on the AI is going to be a huge problem, I think, and lead people away from their very selves, the core truths of who they are within, which is the most powerful and beautiful truth that there could possibly be. You know, part of the divine. Part of the divine is within you. A path to the divine is within you, you know. Some people tend to think that we are gods, and I think that's a very dangerous thing to say for the human psyche, which loves to hold on to things for the ego, you know. So I tend to think more that we have God within us. We have access to God, to the divine, to source energy. We are made up from that. We have fragment of that in this little body, in this temporary home of a human shell, a human body. But in order to fully merge with it, you have to completely bypass your left hemisphere of your brain. And not many people can do that. That full, absolute enlightenment isn't going to happen to many people. Therefore, we are not acting as gods or as goddesses. If we are being filtered still through the left hemisphere of the brain, then we are not gods or goddesses, but we have we have the ability to act in a way that drops the ego. But until we completely do, we cannot necessarily align ourselves with that, you know? And so the twin flame journey to me forms a huge part of this for people right now, because it's coming together with your other half, literally. Well, I say other half, you're a part of you. It's just coming together in this way, this love that's so great. And it's such a beautiful, sacred thing. So it can be difficult. It can be difficult, but hold on, because there is purpose to this that many people are not seeing just yet. Hold on. Come back to yourself. Come back to your faith in God. Know that we are none of us separate from anyone. Not really. It's all illusory. All separation is illusory in part. And hold on and anchor that love, that trust in the divine, and you will be guided. You will have people, you will have beings with you on the etheric planes. They can't take away any lessons you're meant to learn. They won't take away your suffering if you're meant to walk it, I don't believe. But they will help you walk your path, and they will stand with you and give you comfort and guidance if you need it. So you're never alone. You are never alone. And if you're going through this, then you're stronger than you think, because you wouldn't be given this experience if you were not strong enough to handle it, not this experience. You know, this is very much a divine-led experience. I don't necessarily think that everything that we experience on this planet is divinely led, although I think the divine can have a hand in all sorts of things, including solutions. But I do believe that the twin flame journey is one such experience, and that you are going to come through it one way or the other, whether together or not, in a way that will hopefully make sense to you one day. So just keep that bit of faith in your heart. And I wish you well. I wish you well. It is a difficult journey, and I hope there's been some words here that might have comforted you. Yeah, just try to keep the faith, you know. Just try to keep the faith. Wishing you well. Take care, and God bless.